everyone! While I was shopping for my next doll, I came across Ipplehouse new release of their newest fantasy KID sculpts, and Fairyland with their Type 2 Angela and the Medusa snake crown. I was rather intrigued. I decided to make my own fantasy parts since my 3D printer had been idle for much of this year. I found a pair of horns that I liked on Thingiverse. It is a cosplay for a character I'm not familiar with, but I liked the aesthetics. I knew that I needed to create a recessed area to house the magnets so that it could attach to the head of my PukiFee, which came with magnets glued in already. So I'm using Mesh Mixer to modify the STL file. First, I need to scale the horns to an appropriate size. So visually I estimate that about an inch would look right, or about the 25mm range. Then, to make it slightly easier to print, I reorient the piece to lie flatter. Then, to create the recess, I import a cylinder primitive shape and scale it a little larger than my magnets, which are 6 by 3mm in size. So in this case, I made the diameter 7mm and the height 3.5mm. Then it's a matter of positioning the cylinder into the base of the horn so it doesn't create a break in the surface. I spend most of the time making fine adjustments, mostly based on visual cues. I use the object viewer, which is like layers in image editing software, to hide the horn to see how the cutout will look like. It looks good, so I select the objects in the order of the horn, then the cylinder. The order of the selection is important because it determines which object gets subtracted from the other. I don't have any concerns, so I accept it and then do a visual inspection of the Boolean difference just to make sure it didn't cause any tears in the manifold or weird artifacts. Finally, I export the new STL file. Next, I work in Cura to configure my slice settings so that my print can have the best chance of success. Cura gives a representation of how the printer will create the piece. Since this is a small piece, I don't want to do much in terms of finishing it afterward. I opted to change my layer height to the smallest my printer could do successfully, which is 0.08mm. This is incredibly thin compared to the standard quality, which is 0.2mm. Then I check that the dimensions are in the correct range, which for me was about 25mm. I also use the slicer to arrange the piece so that the largest surface area is at the bottom of the print. I hit the slice button, which starts the process to generate the proposed path the printer should take to create the 3D object. At this point, I realized I wanted to add a raft so that the bottom layers don't get distorted, since I elected to have a heated bed. Also, it would give it just a bit more insurance of not being knocked down accidentally by the nozzle or the carriage. Then another look through the layers, mostly because it's fun. Once I'm more or less satisfied, I save the file to a memory card and load it onto my 3D printer and start the print. This print took about 90 minutes and I sped up the footage by 160 times. It's kind of mesmerizing. Here is Yuna, my PukiFee Rosanna. As I mentioned, she already came with magnets in her head back, so I will use them to attach the horns with my own magnets. I double check the size of the horn and to confirm the side of the head it will sit. These magnets that I bought a while back were for a different project, but I never got around to doing it. I popped one off the bunch and brought it close to the side of Yuna's head, and it just flew out of my hand to the correct polar position. I take a Sharpie and mark the top of the magnet to make sure I don't glue it in backwards. Then I place it on a scrap piece of parchment paper to prevent hot glue from getting onto my desk. I squeeze a small amount into the cavity I created and then plop the horn on top of the magnet and try to quickly get to the point where I can apply constant pressure to it until it is cooled. There is a small amount of excess glue that I peel off. Now we can try it out. She looks so cute. Here's a mirrored piece that I had printed earlier. Now her new fantasy parts are complete. Hopefully this inspires you to make your own. Thanks for watching.